¿Cómo se dice en inglés? Please, please, please. Yes, please. Listen to me. Yes, please. Peace forever. Peace forever. Peace forever. Esto se llama lenguaje tarzaneado. Tipo Tarzán sería Shipas, Shipas, Shipas por siempre. Shipas, paz, paz, Shipas, paz, paz, Shipas, paz, paz, Shipas, paz, paz. Not war, get speech, the people United States, de parte de the people Bolivarian Republic. ¿Qué dime? ¿Tú estás chavando? ¿Cómo se dice en inglés?
Sí, paz. No guerra. Sí, paz. No guerra. You see this right here, everybody? This is why the U.S. hasn't been able to overthrow Venezuela for over 20 years now. What has it been? I'm bad at math. 27 years since the revolution and the election of Hugo Chavez. This is why. Because despite all of the sanctions and the sabotage and the just endless sums of money that have been dumped into the right-wing Venezuelan opposition, the U.S. has not been able to kill their spirit. They haven't. I mean, the sanctions have really devastated this country in Venezuela. It's made it so they can't process their own oil, so they can't utilize these, massive crude oil reserves that they have, the largest in the world. And they can't utilize their own wealth. So this has, huge effects on the people. The government has done amazing things, opening public grocery stores and whatnot in conjunction with Iran and other countries to make sure that people are fed, giving food directly to the Venezuelan commune system to make sure they are fed, all sorts of things like that. There's no doubt that the sanctions have led to, all sorts of struggles for the Venezuelan people, not having certain foods, not having certain medicines that they need, things like this. But still, they've continued to fight for their sovereignty. They've continued to fight for their independence. They've continued to vote for the Socialist Party in the National Assembly elections and the presidential elections year after year after year, besides 2015, which is a bit of an outlier. They've continued to succeed. They've continued to win the support of their people, no matter how much the United States strangles them. And I mean, I didn't even mention the propaganda regime, right? In the U.S. media, we're told that all of the media in Venezuela is consolidated under Maduro, right? The government controls all the media. It's not the case at all. Okay, there's a lot of private media in Venezuela. It's not like Cuba, where it's a communist country. There's like 50 to 75% privately owned media, which means the United States can funnel whatever narratives they want through those media outlets. And you better believe that the Venezuelan corporate media and the Venezuelan elite is connected deeply with the American elite and the American government. So these guys are being flooded with anti-government propaganda. They're being strangled under economic sanctions. There have been multiple coup attempts against their State Department, and they've all failed. I mean, against their state, and they've all failed. The people have stayed together. I mean, one of the most inspirational stories comes from 2002, when Hugo Chavez was couped in conjunction with the CIA, and the Venezuelan people hit the streets en masse in such giant numbers that the U.S. thought they were going to have a complete and total revolt on their hands. So they had to bring Hugo Chavez back and put him back in power. So, that's how far these people have gone in order to fight these U.S. regime change efforts. And, I've studied the Venezuelan people for a long time, and I can tell you now, never been there, sadly. I'm hoping to go soon. Many of my friends have been there. But I could tell you that this is something that's been in their history forever. They've never accepted colonialism. They've never accepted foreign domination by another country. And a great example of that in history is when they attacked Richard Nixon's motorcade. So a lot of people don't even know that this happened. But Richard Nixon, he wasn't president yet. He was, managing foreign policy or whatever, some evil imperialist man job. Um, and he was pushing for increased U.S. involvement in Venezuela, pushing, probably for the oil reserves to be privatized. I can't remember exactly what he was pushing for. Oh, it was after their president had been overthrown. And the United States, probably by the Communist Party of Venezuela, and the United States was giving that guy asylum and trying to install their own puppet dictator at the time. And they almost killed Richard Nixon. We almost didn't get the Watergate scandal because the people of Venezuela almost murdered Richard Nixon. They just destroyed his car and almost flipped it over at one point. So, yeah, they've never accepted U.S. domination, no matter how much propaganda they're indoctrinated with or how much the U.S. starves their people and tries to turn them against their government. Do you think that war will happen in Venezuela? It's impossible to predict. We don't know what's going on, in the towers of power within the U.S. government and the U.S. State Department and the intelligence agencies and all of that. So it's impossible to know exactly what their plan is. But I think we're getting close, and I think it's very likely. Because, as I said, Venezuela is one of these countries that the U.S. has dumped billions of dollars into, billions and billions of dollars into overthrowing this government, and they haven't been able to do it. And now it's a big deal because Europe and the U.S. are, with the sanctions, especially Europe, are struggling to get energy with the sanctions on Russia. So they desperately need Venezuelan oil reserves, which are the largest oil reserves on Earth. And the way Europe and the U.S. sees it is we have this massive sum of oil right to the south of the U.S., and it's being blocked off by this pesky socialist government that wants to keep its own oil and reinvest it in development. So it's really a thorn in the side of the United States that's now hindering their larger geopolitical goals, which are to basically wage a war against Russia and China, because they need energy to do so. And they can't get energy from Russia anymore. So Venezuela becomes the next target. Venezuelans have always had a revolutionary spirit. I agree. And they still do to this day. Yeah, it's very common across all of Latin America. Not to say they're non-materialist, but they definitely have this, there's a reason they uphold Bolivar, and they see him as like a historical hero. They have like an admiration for these historical heroes, these independence fighters, these people like Jose Marti is another good example, someone who sacrificed himself for the Cuban independence struggle, who didn't even really have to. He rode in on the front lines on a horse and just got killed right away when he didn't really need to do that. He wasn't a warrior, he was a writer. But, the Latin American people honor him and love him and see him as a martyr. So there's definitely that kind of, it's almost like a spiritual communist ethic. I don't know how to describe it without sounding anti-materialist, but they like romanticism and stuff too, and like more poetic writing. So yeah, you can't just overthrow those people by putting them under sanctions. They're going to continue to fight you even if they're starving. We saw that with Cuba in the 90s as well. It is very scary, but it will be another Vietnam. Yeah, we talked about this on the last stream, so I won't go into it too in depth. But basically, Venezuela's people's militias have like doubled or tripled in size. So just as probably would happen in the United States if another country was, surrounding us with warships and threatening to invade, people are taking up arms and joining the military and beginning to train. And they're actively saying in Venezuela, Yankee, we will make this your new Vietnam. We understand this territory. We understand our own country. We're not going to fight you in a straight up war. We're going to use asymmetrical warfare, guerrilla warfare, and we're going to trap you into a war that beats and bloodies your country until you leave with your tail between your legs because you don't want to lose any more money and troops, and because people in America are at your throats about, continuing this endless, senseless war. That's what Vietnam was, and, Venezuela would be much the same. I mean, Carlos said on the last stream, the advantage that Vietnam had that allowed them to win was that they were willing to die. They had nothing else to lose. You know, it was their homeland, their livelihood, their everything, their independence. And they were willing to die for that. They were willing to sacrifice their lives for that. So even though the U.S. had vastly superior weaponry and numbers, and Vietnam's this small jungle country, Vietnam and Laos. I hate when people don't include Laos, because Laos was essential, and the path at Lao, the communists in Lao, are heroes that should be honored and remembered right alongside the Viet Minh. But anyways, those countries were able to win because they were willing to die. They were willing to sacrifice everything. And you know, one of my friends right now is outside the coast of Venezuela in a tanker. He's a military guy, right? And he's texting me like, not that excited about being there, not that excited about a potential war with Venezuela. I have a lot of friends who are in the military who tell me stuff like this, right? They're just there doing a job, or there because they want to serve their country, but they end up invading another country, and they're not that excited about it. A lot of them believe that they're fighting Israel's wars now. That's huge in the U.S. military. So are they going to have the same dedication and the same willingness to die and the same willingness to fight to the end that the Venezuelan people are going to have defending their homeland? Right? The soccer moms who are joining the military now to fight for their children. You know how powerful that is? You know how many people my mom could take out if someone was going after her kids? I think she could defeat John Jones if he was trying to kill me. You know, a mom will do anything for her children. A good mom. So yeah, it's going to be a horrible situation, of course, for Venezuela. And of course, we stand with the working class in Venezuela from the perspective of socialism and proletarian and internationalism and communism. But even just from a strictly American patriotic perspective, it's going to be terrible for America. You're sending all these people to fight and die for nothing. And what happens if America wins, if they do depose the Venezuelan government right away and take all the oil? It's not going to benefit you and me. It's not going to lower oil prices. It's going to go to Wall Street shareholders. It's going to go who are going to sell it to Europe so that they can continue to fight a war against Russia and China. They're just going to pivot right to the next war. So I can't think of anything more senseless. And a lot of people are falling for the propaganda, though. I will say a lot of conservatives have learned nothing from Iraq. And it's crazy. Like, how can you be a pro-Trump conservative who heard him rail against the war in Iraq and call it a disastrous war for oil on the campaign trail? But then when he's trying to send you to Venezuela, you're like, like those are the sections of MAGA that are literally a cult. But, you know, it's just his normal talking points that he always uses. They're bringing drugs and they're bringing immigrants. Well, Trump, if you destroy another country's government, if you start dropping bombs on them and invading them, you know what that's going to create a lot of? It's going to create a lot of immigrants and refugees. And you know where they're going to come? They're going to come to America. Just like what happened with Libya and Europe. NATO and the US and Europe destroyed Libya. Now European countries have tons of Libyans living in them. And you have these right-wing douchebags like Tommy Robinson scapegoating them for all the country's problems. And it's like, you created them. You made them flee their homes by destroying their homes. And now they want to do the exact same thing again in Venezuela. You know, and usually with working class people, I give them more lenience, you know, like if they have false consciousness, if they have the wrong political opinions, I try not to be judgmental and just talk to them and give them my opinion. And usually they're just undereducated, you know, and can be won over once they hear a coherent argument. Most regular apolitical working class people, you know, not the people who are completely drunk on Fox News. You know, but then you have these people who are like, sorry, where I was going with that was I'm not being as lenient on this one, right? I'm not being like, oh, well, here's the thing, you know. I'm like, dumbasses. It's time for a little bit of tough love, MAGA. You're being dumbasses. The reason you voted for Trump was because he promised no more wars and railed against the Bush administration for invading Iraq. And now he wants to send you to Venezuela. How stupid are you? How many times are you going to fall for it again? You know, and sometimes that's what people need in terms of messaging. I learned this as a coach. Sometimes they need the soft approach where you're being friendly and taking them through things step by step. And sometimes people need to hear, hey, you're a dumbass. You're a dumbass who's being tricked by an orange clown who wants to send your children to die in a country that you've never been to in order to steal their oil for extremely wealthy people in New York City who you'll never meet in your life, make money off the backs of working class people like me and you while we get nothing. Sometimes people need to hear that shit. And that's what the MAGA members supporting the invasion of Venezuela need to hear that right now. I ain't being nice. Yo, 10 Midwestern Marx memberships. Let's go. Thank you, Hannes. This appreciate it. Shout out to whoever gets those memberships. Make sure you utilize the perks that come with being a Midwestern Marx member, such as these books up here. And I think you get some emojis and stuff. I don't know. There's a bunch of perks that you get. I remember setting it up a while ago. I know you get the books, the ebooks. So I'm late, but so far, straight facts. Thank you. And special thank you for the memberships today, because I woke up today and my MMA TikTok account that I, make videos about wrestling and MMA and politics with, got demonetized for no reason. They said unoriginal content, but then none of my videos have been flagged for unoriginality. So they didn't tell me which content was unoriginal or why I was actually being demonetized. So that's about $300 to $500 a month out of my pocket now, for literally no reason. An account that I built up and put a lot of time into. So I'm not here to complain and say that doing TikTok is the hardest job, but it is very scary to have your income tied to these platforms that are owned by Silicon Valley oligarchs who hate you ideologically because of, what we stand for. So yeah, patreon.com/MidwesternMarx if you want to support us financially. Really appreciate all of the super chats. Gonna have to grind a little extra this month because TikTok took money out of my pocket for no reason. Okay, guys, I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick, and while I do, I'll play the intro because I totally forgot to play the intro. So we'll see you in 2 minutes.
Sheriff Hazard is a hard man to be. High Sheriff is his only plan. He digs through pockets, takes what he can, for he's High Sheriff Hazard. He caught me one evening, and here's what he said: "You look like a Russian, you look like a red, and if you're fond of your skin and your head, beware the High Sheriff of Hazard."
All right. Farewell to Sheriff Hazard. I actually found him the other day. I found Sheriff Hazard, and he won't be a problem anymore. Let's just say that. I live by the Mississippi River, so you may see him floating down the river if you're by it sometime. So yeah, no more Sheriff Hazard. I got his ass. Anyways, some idiots think it's them or us, so why not it be our rich elite that take over nations' resources, and it will trickle down. It's BS for the reasons we already know. Absolutely, Elizabeth. And this is why Nick Fuentes' Venezuela take makes me think he might actually be a Fed more than anything else he's ever said in his career. I mean, besides all of the race war rhetoric, like that stuff is just stereotypical Fed work. You know, anywhere where socialism and a working class government has thrived, the U.S. has countered it by pushing racial division, pushing ethnic tensions, whether it be Yugoslavia or there are many other examples, Ukraine. So that stuff is like Fed shit, but Fuentes' takes on Venezuela are insane. This is his take, right? Is that we need to invade them so we can be a rich, powerful country and take their oil, and they can't tell us what to do. Just completely ignoring the fact that that's the same thing they told us about Iraq, and it didn't lead to any cheaper oil prices. It created ISIS, left our military in a disastrous occupation for over 20 years now, and allowed the Koch brothers and Dick Cheney and Halliburton and all these big corporations to make a ton of money, not even by creating American jobs, but by creating jobs in Iraq, taking their oil. Very, poorly paying jobs where people are overworked, which is why another reason why they want to outsource everything, cheaper labor. And another reason why they want to overthrow certain governments so they can set the labor costs as low as possible. That's also what the IMF and World Bank structural adjustment programs are aimed at doing. But anyways, there's no way in which America as a country, as a society, benefits from this. Only the ruling elite, who do the exact opposite of what's in the interest of the rest of us, what's in the interest of the whole of the country. So the fact that Fuentes is, now that the mainstream Republicans are accepting him and he's calling for war with Venezuela, it's like, all right, buddy, what's going on here? Who are you connected to? Who are you working for? Calling for war and I mean, the guy's a misogynist, right? He doesn't like women or think women should be in politics. But then who's the U.S. trying to install in Venezuela? Maria Corina Machado, a woman. Nick Fuentes wants young Americans to go fight and die to put a woman in power. Some misogynist he is. I had another point to make, but I can't remember it anymore. That's just funny to me that he says all this stuff about women. And then he's like, yeah, but let's go to war in Venezuela. Oh, and then this is the other thing I was going to say. Maria Corina Machado is a hardcore Zionist. He wants to install a Zionist woman. A woman who once wrote a letter to Israel begging them to invade Venezuela. And now he's like, yes, invade Venezuela. Good. I'm really anti-Israel, guys. Sorry, I'll talk like Nick Fuentes. Listen, guys, I'm seriously anti-Israel, okay? Listen, guys. The thing is that to be anti-Israel, we have to support Israel's agenda here in America, or here in the Western Hemisphere. We're a rich, powerful country. We can do whatever we want. Venezuela's got oil. Why would we not go take that oil for Israel? I mean, for our own interests. We're big and strong, and we can do it. So we should just do it. So what if it's what Israel wants? I'm totally anti-Israel. I just support their agenda in America's hemisphere and sphere of influence. I'm an idiot. Thank you, Sumyajit Mitra, for becoming a YouTube member twice somehow. I don't know how you did that, my friend, but thank you very much and congratulations. Enjoy the perks, as I said before. These streams give me hope. Hell yeah. That's why I got to do more of them. That's why I'm coming to you guys in the middle of the day today, because we got to do more streams. We got to meet. I'm making so many TikTok videos right now, and partially I'm, streaming because I got demonetized on one of my TikToks, and I'm like, shit. Better start pivoting to YouTube again. For monetary reasons, just that is what it is. Got to make money, got to feed yourself. But also, I'm yapping so much on TikTok, and it's like, well, why don't I yap about the important things on YouTube, right? Why make 10 TikTok videos when you could just make one YouTube video saying all the same stuff? And on TikTok, nobody has an attention span. You have to be so like point by point by point by point, one after another. Otherwise, people will slide off. Versus on YouTube, you guys obviously have more attention spans to sit and listen and watch streams, or Twitch or wherever else. So I want to do more streams where we can meet and discuss strategy, discuss the future of this country and, our role in it and what we can do to move it in the correct direction. But we can also have those more long form conversations that I like to have, and I can make longer points and expand upon my points without having to worry about losing the audience because they're scrolling through. And then hopefully that will mean that, my TikToks will be better too, because they'll be more high quality. It won't just be me talking about anything that I want to talk about in the entire world. It'll be me talking about things that are specifically designed for TikTok. And then I'll save the news and regular news, politics, theoretical analysis for YouTube. I don't know. That's kind of my idea right now. I don't know if I can keep up with that. It's a lot to stream and to post all those videos, but I got a lot to say. I'm a professional yapper, so if anyone can do it, it's me and Carlos. I stream on Twitch and YouTube and X and actually Facebook. Some people always watch on Facebook. We probably shouldn't stream on Facebook because it's not really worth it for the amount of views we get. But some people always watch on Facebook, and it brings in new people too, because actually my TikToks often blow up on Facebook with people from other countries, with older people sometimes. It's a different audience over there. So yeah, we streamed all of them. If we were smart, we would probably stream exclusively to one. Or we would stream to Twitch and just post highlights on YouTube. That would be smart. But, as much as we need to make money in order to survive and support ourselves, you guys do give us enough to support ourselves. We do make enough to support ourselves through ad revenue on TikTok and YouTube at the moment. So our primary goal, as long as we're not completely broke and starving, is to spread education to as many platforms as possible. So it's worth it to me to stream everywhere to take a little bit of a hit, maybe in viewership or in money, because I just care about getting the message out more than anything. So I ain't gonna lie, Haas is a big Haas might have me beat. Haas might have me beat. You can't stop him though. It's like he's yapping, yes, but whatever he's saying is like almost always some brilliant shit. So you're just like, keep going. Facebook is mostly boomers. It is, but make sure you join our ACP page if you can. It's such an interesting community. Facebook works so much different than other apps. Partially because our page is heavily moderated. We have like 6 moderators who delete spam and bullshit every single day, unlike Twitter where everyone can just throw shit at the wall. But then there's also it's like a community. So you'll have people who aren't ACP coming into the ACP Facebook group to ask questions and having conversations with our cadre in the comments, which is very interesting to see. And it's a good tool as well. And then you'll see people from other communist parties around the country, especially those that are fraternal with the ACP, coming onto our Facebook page and having conversations about international politics, asking about strategy, asking what do you guys do? Here's what we're doing. Let's compare notes. So the Facebook group has actually become a really cool community. I'm actually pretty pumped about it. So make sure you're following the ACP group on Facebook if you have an account, and like the ACP page, because we upload pretty much all of our stuff to Facebook too. Haas has a lot of great points. Yeah, him and Carlos, I would say, are probably the most brilliant people I've met, like theoretically and in terms of understanding history and politics. Now, keep in mind, I've never met Michael Hudson in person. When it comes to like interviews and books, I feel like Michael Hudson is like the smartest person I've ever learned from, where he has like this expansive knowledge that goes back so many years into like ancient history. And Haas kind of has that too, but obviously Hudson's been around longer. It's a huge advantage in academia. You only get smarter as you get older until you're like 80. So I got booted from the ACP Facebook page for asking critical questions about the DPRK. What did you ask? Eddie, have you thought about fighting in MMA? A lot. A lot. I have thought about fighting MMA a lot. However, the way I make my money now is not through my body, but through my brain. And fighting makes your brain less effective. So I just stick to wrestling. And unless I get like the one exception I would make would be like if there was a celebrity boxing match or a celebrity MMA match where I was taking on like Ben Shapiro or some right winger, that I would do at the drop of a hat. But I probably won't ever like just fight and try to see how good I can be. I've thought about just doing one fight and then calling it quits, but I'm too competitive, and I know if I won one fight, then I'd be like, well, let's see how far we can take this UFC champ, baby. So move to Cuba with your soft ass. God, I wish. I would train with their team too. They have such a good wrestling team. Haas citing Hudson is why I started paying more attention to ACP. Nice. Yeah, Hudson's the GOAT, man. He's the GOAT. Thoughts on RCA? Good question. You know what's interesting is I've been going to campuses around the country with the ACP and tabling, or at least around the Midwest, I should say, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois. And there's a big RCA presence on these campuses, but I always get the sense with these RCA people that they view ACP with like almost like we're the edgy outsiders that they're not allowed to talk about. Like they see what we're doing, and they like it, and they think it's based, and they maybe wish their own organization would adopt some of these things, and they're interested in it. And then they hear from the leadership of their organization, no, these guys are evil, these guys are fascists, blah, blah, blah. And it only makes them more interested in us. They're like intrigued by us is the word. We're like the dangerous, edgy outsiders who maybe they kind of sort of want to be a part of. That's the vibe I got from RCA students. They were not like, we love Trotsky. In fact, some of them were MLs who denounced Trotsky. They weren't like, we love Trotsky, we're all about Trotskyism. They were like, well, the RCA is really the only party with a presence here. So I'm a communist and I joined the RCA. And I'd ask them what they do. Like, we really only do meetings and hand out pamphlets. And I'm like, yep, that's kind of a Trotskyite stereotype that we try to avoid. We're more about working than having meetings where we talk about working. Although meetings are important sometimes, of course. You want to keep them as brief and organized as possible so people have more time and energy to actually get out in the streets and talk to workers or to read theory. So RCA is just a very stereotypical Trotskyite group. Just handing out pamphlets and having meetings and saying the revolution is coming. Mostly drawing from petty bourgeois radicals and college students, as always. But a lot of these RCA people, if you're ACP, start having conversations with RCA people when you're on college campus. If you go do the college campus canvassing, you will see RCA. They're have quite the presence on the campuses right now. And talk to them. Don't be a dick, just talk to them. And I think you'll be able to win a lot of them over. I think a lot of RCA people are communists who are confused, who, are unsure of what to do, unsure of where they stand within the spectrum of left politics. And they just jump into the organization that seems to have the most hype and energy right now, which is RCA. But I think a lot of those people will be ACP with time. I haven't seen a lot of RCA at my campus, but I've seen a lot of FSRO and SDS. Interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen that as much. I've seen FSRO at other events like Palestine events, but that's it. They're always, honestly, of all the parties in America, they seem to have the chillest members, I guess. Maybe just the people I met were cool. One of the older guys was looking at me really weird the rest of the conference. Every time I walked by, he was like looking down at me almost. But he was nice when I talked to him. We talked about China and their position on it and things like that. So in my experience, the FSRO guys have been somewhat cool. Their party line is ridiculous and will never take off in America. They're like, America KKK Turtle Island type communists. But still, they have good positions on imperialism. I'll give them that. Strategy to get to Iowa's unions more. I know it can be difficult with Iowa being a right-to-work state. Yeah, the easiest way in Iowa is to join a workplace that's already got a union and then work your way to the top. I know 2 people in my area in Iowa who have already done that. One is the union steward, and another one, I don't know his actual position, but he's way high up in his union. And all they did was join workplaces on purpose, as communists, joined workplaces that had unions and worked their way to the top. And the main thing that you have to do is try to get your coworkers involved, which is very, very difficult, my friends. Your coworkers are going to be tired and sore at the end of every day, and they just want to go home and be with their families and drink beer. They don't want to go to a union meeting or think about anything else. And you have to get them mobilized and activated and get them involved in the union in any way possible. So if you're a communist and you join an organization with a union, and you're not just like running around with pictures of Stalin talking about how communism is the best, you can work your way to the top very quickly because our unions have been so devastated. And because there's been so much anti-union propaganda, there's not a lot of involvement in the unions as is. So if you go into a workplace and you're like super excited to work within the union, you will work your way up very quick. And that's what I would recommend doing. Joining one that's already organized, because trying to start a new union, very difficult. And you kind of have to be in America. It's not in countries like the UK, but in America, you kind of have to be embedded in that workplace too. You already have to have those connections and the trust of your coworkers. And you have to have knowledge of what their actual needs are and what their struggles are. So it takes a lot longer to form a new union, which is why salting is a good tactic, but a very difficult tactic with right to work. I would join a pre-existing union if I were you. Great question, though, Iowa worker. Oh, and good job on the workouts lately. Me and Iowa worker, if you want to work out with us, check out the Heavy app, HEVY. They do not sponsor me yet, but it's a very good app for tracking your workouts. We have a bunch of ACP comrades on it, and we all share what we're doing with each other. I've put on tons of pounds to all my lifts lately because I've been going hard. I've been in a bad mood lately, so my lifts have been just insane. I did over 100,000 pounds of volume today for leg day, which is not good. You should not do that. That's overtraining. But I was pissed off. Do you think the Venezuela war is an attempt to delay a crisis of overproduction? Now, this is an interesting question, too. Sorry, I have a bunch of stuff pulled up today to react to, but I've just been interacting with the chat the whole time because you guys are asking good questions. Sorry, let me answer this one. Right to work is a law that basically says you don't have the right to a union. So you have the right to work, and that's it. You don't have the right to collective bargaining or a union or anybody who fights for your basic needs. So it's a law that exists in states like Iowa in order to prevent workplaces from unionizing. And it's one of the most anti-communist, anti-worker, borderline anti-American laws in existence that's disgusting and needs to be blown up forever. And also, your employer can basically fire you for no reason in right to work. Yeah, it literally means you only have the right to work. That's it. That's what it means. And they say right to work because it sounds like a good thing. Oh, my rights. I'm getting more rights. No, you're having all of them stripped from you, except for this one, the right to be exploited. But anyways, this is an interesting question. I think in many ways, yes. But I think even more so, it's Trump's 50-year mortgage plan, I believe, is an attempt to push back a financial crisis similar to 2008. Because what happened in 2008, people couldn't pay their mortgages, the loans that they had taken from the banks. So when enough people couldn't pay the banks back, they all crashed. They ran out of money. They went bankrupt and had to be bailed out by the Obama administration, the Obama regime. And I think that's probably what's going on now. There's so much debt, all these predatory loans are being handed out. People are struggling to pay them back. I think we're possibly headed for another financial crisis. And what does extending mortgages from 30 years to 50 years do? It allows people to not default on their loans. It gives them an extra 20 years to pay the bank's money. So it's going to increase the amount of money that the banks have. It's going to prevent people from defaulting on their loans like they did in 2008. And it's pushing back a likely financial crisis. So I think, and I don't even know if you could even necessarily call that a crisis of overproduction anymore. It's almost taken on a new form. I'm not an expert on that. You should talk to Radhika Desai on the differences between the different kinds of capitalist crisis, or I'd have to go back and watch our interview with her. We did an interview on the different kinds of capitalist crisis. But what I think we're seeing here is a financial crisis, which is when the banks loan out too much money that people can't pay back, and then the banks go under. But that can also stem from overproduction too. But car repos are at a record high right now. Exactly what I'm talking about. So, one of the main loans that banks give out are mortgage loans. So if you extend the time that people can pay them, you push back a potential crash of the banks by another 20 years. Maybe you probably push it back by like 1 year before everything goes under. But it does look like the Democrats are mounting some opposition to the war in Venezuela, which is surprising. The Senate passed a war powers resolution, or is seeking the passing of a war powers resolution to block Trump from invading Venezuela. Chuck Schumer was supporting this on X. And I mean, I think it's basically an example, because Joe Biden was strangling Venezuela under sanctions and threatening Venezuela and dumping money into the right-wing Venezuelan opposition to try and rig their elections and claiming that their elections were fraudulent, right? The Democrats were going for regime change in Venezuela too. And I think what this is basically is the Democrats and the Republicans are now taking turns, and maybe it's always been this way, but they're now taking turns being the controlled opposition. Meaning when one party's in power pushing for endless war, the other party kind of pushes back on it, and they're like, we're the anti-war ones now. We're pushing back on war against Venezuela. And then when the Democrats are in office again, they'll continue to push for more wars. So Trump, on the campaign trail, postured himself as this anti-war isolationist who wanted to focus here at home, railing against Iraq and the Bush administration. But then once he gets in office, he acts just like George W. Bush, trying to invade Venezuela. And the Democrats, who just destroyed Libya and Syria, and, Biden increased bombing of Somalia, all these things. Of course, we know the Democrats are pro-war. But now that they don't have any power, they pretend to be anti-war. They pretend like they're fighting the war. Come vote for us. We're the anti-war party. And then when the Democrats are in power, they become the pro-war party, and the Republicans are like, come vote for us. We're the anti-war party. So at a time when all Americans are sick and tired of these endless wars, both pro-war parties are desperate to pretend that they're anti-war parties, at least when they're, not in power. So I thought that was pretty interesting. That's kind of an interesting dynamic that we're seeing here with the evolution of the imperialist system. And speaking of that, kind of, I had some good transition planned. I was going to transition from that story to another story, but now I can't remember. I can't remember what story I was going to transition into off of that one. I thought it was a good transition in my head. But I guess speaking of controlled opposition, that's kind of a good segue. Speaking of controlled opposition, Zoran Mamdani. I don't know why some communists support Saddam. Sorry. Thank you for the 40 whatever currency that is super chat. I always forget. Thank you very much, comrade. They support him because he was a Ba'athist socialist, technically. And I mean, most communists just say, Saddam was a bastard, but obviously the U.S. shouldn't have overthrown him because they made the situation worse. He was buddy-buddy with the U.S. in the 80s. The U.S. gave him the green light to gas Iranians and, fight that horrific war against Iran. I think the kind of consensus opinion from most Marxist-Leninists is that Saddam wasn't great at all, but he was better than, complete chaos and destabilization. Having a so-so borderline corrupt Ba'athist government that sometimes tortures people a lot is better than having ISIS running around your country fighting with every other terror group who wants to take power, or having the U.S. occupy your country for 25 years. But, some people are just like, he was a Ba'athist socialist. I support him because he was a socialist. I support Ba'athist socialism. And, he did have some socialist economic policies. He was trying to restructure Iraq's oil quotas with the U.S. so they could have more money to reinvest in development projects. But yeah, I think most people think like Saddam was a bastard, but he didn't deserve what he got, and Iraq was much worse off. Saddam was a CIA assassin. Yeah, he worked hand in hand with the U.S. for years. Okay, I'll answer that next super chat in a second, but actually I'll just answer it now before we go right into the next segment. Thank you, Pavel, for the €10 super chat. They're rolling in today. I appreciate you guys, especially after getting demonetized on one of my TikTok accounts today. I appreciate it. Hi, Eddie. Long time no see. Long time no see, Pavel. I'm back, though. More streams are coming. I started to motivate my coworkers to join the union. Let's go. Yeah, it's easier in Europe than it is in the United States. It's one of the things that Europe has an advantage with, one of the few things. But that's awesome, man. I'm excited to hear that. Additionally, I found a socialist party in Germany, the DKP. I have to drive 1 hour to help them, but it's a start. I'm glad, man. That's awesome. For those who don't know the lore, Pavel is in Europe, and he is trying to find a socialist communist party similar to the ACP because they're all a bunch of Euro-communist liberals over there right now. Because the same thing that was done to the American left was also done to the European left, where it became all about social issues and culture war and supporting liberals over conservatives and all this nonsense. So a lot of the parties there, the communist parties, are just completely shot. And Pavel's been looking for one that's not. And I don't know what the DKP is, but I trust that it's better than the other ones. Germany's in real rough. The German left is in real rough shape between the Greens and the Die Linke. Yeah. So hopefully DKP is cool. I'll have to do some research into them. Just because you're now a member. So yeah, congratulations, Pavel. That makes me really happy to hear. Okay, Zohran. Do not redeem. Sorry. Shout out Gaddafi. Hell yeah. Do not redeem. Oh, that's a good super chat. I'll answer that in a second. The billionaire class and Zionism. Activists slam Zoran Mamdani's move to rehire police commissioner. So for those who don't know, what I said on TikTok was the most based part of Zoran Mamdani's campaign. The best thing that he did on the campaign trail was he drew a connection for people between the IDF and the New York Police Department, who are deeply intertwined. They train together. They get weapons from each other. The New York Police Commissioner, this lady, Jessica Tisch, is an ultra-Zionist who loves Israel. And on the campaign trail, Zoran was railing against this and explaining to people, how the NYPD, which is notorious for its, basically being a gang, how it's connected to the IDF. However, despite railing about all that again on the campaign trail, when he was actually elected, he reappointed Jessica Tisch, the ultra-Zionist police commissioner. So once again, with one of these social democratic candidates running through the Democratic Party, we're seeing that they were all talk. They were all rhetoric. But when they're in office, their behavior, their policies, their actions never back up their rhetoric. What is the point of railing against the connection between the NYPD and the IDF if you're not going to do anything about it as mayor? when you have the power to. This is something you actually have control over. You could actually kick this lady to the curb and hire a new police commissioner who's not a Zionist, who wants to reform the police department. I would actually give him props for that. I would give him credit if he did that. I'd be like, wow, I said that Zoran wasn't going to amount to a damn thing, but at least he did this. I still don't think he's going to do much else, but at least he did some good in this damn world. But he couldn't even do that, bro. He couldn't even do the bare minimum. It's like when AOC refused to push for single payer healthcare. When she refused to tell Nancy Pelosi, I'm not voting for you for Speaker of the House until you bring single payer healthcare up for a vote. When she refused to fight for even the smallest little things that she promised us on the campaign trail, if it might upset the Democratic establishment. That's exactly what we're seeing here. I don't want to upset people. I don't want to cause too much of a stir or too much of a splash. So I'll just leave Netanyahu in charge of the New York Police Department because I don't want to upset high-ranking Democrats. And this comes right after he also endorsed Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker of the House. Speaking of AOC backing a corrupt Democrat for Speaker of the House without demanding any concessions, he backed Hakeem Jeffries like that. They asked him, they're like, would you support Hakeem Jeffries? Like, yes, unequivocally. Unequivocally, I stand with the elite corrupt Democrats sending Americans to fight and die in senseless wars and robbing us blind. Yes, I unequivocally support the people who I railed against on the campaign trail for the last few months, who I tricked my constituents into thinking I was going to fight. I mean, it literally took like a week for us to be proven right on this, guys. I know it was like rough when it was happening because everyone was all excited about Zoran and we had to be the party poopers, but it literally took a week for him to start acting like a corrupt scumbag and prove that he just scammed everybody. Do not redeem. So now in our lifetime and other Palestinian organizations have signed this massive protest or this massive petition against Zoran reappointing Jessica Tisch. So shout out to those organizations for holding him accountable. Shout out to them for making the public more aware of this, making the left more aware that this guy has sold them out already. Because the sooner we realize that, guys, the sooner we can move on to actual change. The sooner we get the hell away from the Democratic Party and all these scammers, charlatans, and frauds who talk about moving it left, the sooner we get away from that shit, the sooner we can actually change things for working class people in this country. The sooner you ditch the Democratic Party and actually become a communist like Lenin and Mao and all of our heroes before us did, the sooner we can actually make change and we can actually get rid of these evil, evil scumbags like Jessica Tisch who are running our police departments, which is scary. That a clown like that would be in a position like that with those connections to the IDF. And then, of course, everybody saw this because it was super viral news because Trump was being really weird in his interview with Zoran Mamdani. He was like trying to be Zoran's best friend. He was like enamored by him or something. Probably because Trump also campaigned on lowering the cost of living and then didn't do shit to actually do it. He probably knows that Zoran is just going to become part of the swamp just like him, and he's laughing at him. Anyway, Zoran said his meeting with Trump was productive and, they had a nice conversation. And I just want to say that our party, the American Communist Party, which has never supported Trump, has never endorsed Trump, gets called pro-Trump all the time. Why? Because we invented a strategy, which we didn't actually invent. It's just basic Marxism, where you go to the workers and you meet them where they're at and you educate them about Marxism. And we said all these MAGA people who are voting for Trump are getting on board with his pro-working class anti-war rhetoric. However, Trump is not going to follow through on any of this. That was our prediction, and it has been proven correct with time. And when Trump doesn't follow through, a lot of people in his base are going to split with him, and they're not going to know where to go next. And that's where we can educate them and reach them with communism. All of that is what has happened. We were correct about all of this. His base is now splitting with him and turning on him. And we are there to meet them with education. But we got called fascists and Trump supporters and right-wingers for years because of that strategy. Because we said, let's go to working class Trump supporters and educate them with Marxism and bring them to a different ideology and a different political party than conservatism and the Republican Party. And that was fascist, and that was right-wing. But now Zoran is actually collaborating with Trump, actually meeting with Trump, actually chumming it up with Trump, and saying that it was productive and they want to work together. And he's just being pragmatic. Why is it pragmatism when a social democrat does it, but fascism when a communist does it? That's the question. Most social democrats are patriotic too. They wave the American flag, and yet we're the fascists for taking up our country's flag, and there's nothing wrong with Zoran doing it. It's just insanity, the cognitive dissonance that you can call us fascists for giving Marxist theory to our MAGA uncles, but then Zoran, meeting with Trump himself and working together with Trump himself is, it's a good thing. We're moving Trump left. Hashtag moving Trump left. This is so dumb. Can you have Jesus Motorcycle on? Thank you for the $5 super chat. I will absolutely have Jesus Motorcycle on if that's something that people want to see. Jesus Motorcycle is my deputy in the Politburo of the American Communist Party, so we work together every day. I just talked to him this week, actually today. So I think that would be a cool interview to get Jesus on the stream, and then me and him just kind of chat about what we're doing with the ACP media team and our vision for the future. I think that'd be really cool. So yeah, great idea. Thank you. Do it. Yeah, everybody likes that idea. Everybody likes that idea. Elizabeth, $20. Holy cow. Thank you. That gets a flex. Look, my veins are coming in there. Now, once I start blasting testosterone, I'm going to be too big for the screen. Okay, I'm sorry. I got sidetracked. Thank you so much. $20 super chat. That's huge. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the super chats. Again, got demonetized on one of my TikTok accounts this week. So I'm going to be short a little bit of money this month that I, had come to sort of depend upon. So all of your super chats are greatly appreciated. And of course, we have our Patreon account at Midwestern Marks, and they'll take less of your money. Awesome. Makes outstanding artwork. I agree. We could have a lot of interesting conversations too about like postmodern art. That's what he studies. It's art. That's what he does for a living. So there could be a lot of interesting conversations there. We could talk about proletarian realism. One of my favorite topics is surrealism versus postmodernism. We could talk about that. The DKP are non-revisionists, solid MLs that hold Stalin up. I am an active supporter, not a member, as I live in Austria. I can reach. Oh, I see. Yeah, I thought you were in Austria. That makes sense that you drive over to Germany. Very cool. That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. Shout out to them. Hopefully they can start to have an influence in Germany too, because Lord knows Germany needs it. I mean, the fact that Pavel couldn't find an ACP style party in Germany shows how dark the situation is there. The fact that your only option is Die Linke. The fact that your only option is this. That is dark. This is your only option if you want to be a communist in Germany. This is your leader. This is your Stalin. That's Stalin, Lenin, Mao, and Che. Oh, the last one's mean. Why are they making fun of a disabled person? That one I'm not in favor of, but yeah, dark situation in Germany to say the least. Glad to hear that you found a good, solid party, though, Pavel. Jokes aside. I could see you're a wrestler, college or high school? Both. I coach now. I was a 2-time All-American in college and 3-time placer in high school. Welcome. Kyle Pettis with the $10 super chat. Let's go. Thank you, Iron Kyle. Appreciate you, brother. He's also a member. I didn't even know that. Thank you, Kyle. I hope you've read the books that you get for being a YouTube member. Don't forget that Zoran and DSA are praising this after Trump has publicly been viewed as an Epstein friend after the base has gone out. Yeah, censorship. After the base has gone out from under Trump. Complete failure. Absolutely. Sucking up to Trump at a time when he's more hated than ever. After he's exposed himself for being a fraud while he's pushing for war with Venezuela. And you know what's fucking crazy too? Zoran hasn't tweeted one thing against war with Venezuela. And he's chumming it up with Trump as he's trying to invade that country. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we're the fascists for talking about communism to people who, don't believe in having 700 bathrooms. Like, what kind of fucking upside down world do these people live in? Complete failure. He's not even using his influence to speak out against the disastrous oil war. And he's smiling up there next to Trump while Trump's trying to destroy this sovereign socialist nation. And all he said is, I have to be honest with you, Maduro and Diaz-Canel in Cuba, they're dictators, and we don't want to have a society like them. Like, we know you don't want to have a society like them, buddy. You want to maintain the current imperialist society and grift off of it and pretend like you're railing against it so you can elevate your own political career while being a pussy in practice and refusing to condemn a damn thing that the imperialist system actually does. So, absolutely. Good context there. That's very true. And it made me remember the Venezuela thing. Like, I made a video about that the other day. He hasn't said anything, dude. Anything. Bro has not said one thing against invading a sovereign socialist country other than to call Maduro a dictator. Some socialist this guy is. He literally scammed you all. Do not redeem. Not you all. But any thoughts on Netflix buying Warner Bros? That's crazy. But monopolization, concentration of capital at the top. There are no free markets anymore. There is no free competition anymore. The capitalism of this guy's era, Adam Smith's era, is dead. There is no free competition between industrialists anymore. It's a bunch of monopolies controlling everything and planning the economy to their own accord. It's like an evil bourgeois form of socialism, as everything has become monopolized. So it's just further monopolization. Soon there will be one shareholder group that owns everything. Like the UFC and WWE are owned by the same shareholder group now. It's ridiculous. That's why when Trump met with Zoran, he said there are no differences between the parties. Damn right. If Trump's good for one thing, it's saying the quiet part out loud. It's saying the truth when maybe it's not in his own interest to say the truth even. Or actually more accurately, he says the truth when it's not in the interest of the establishment to tell the truth. And him saying there's no difference between the two parties, there's no difference between me and Zoran. It's like, that's the truest thing he said in a while. They're the exact same thing. And the one party that you can join that won't tail behind the Democrats is the American Communist Party. Straight up. I'm not saying that because I'm in leadership. I'm not saying that because it's my party and I'm just ultra biased. That is the God's honest truth. That is the party you should join if you want to affect change in your country. If you want to be ready for the inevitable coming civil war in your country, that is the one party to join. And I would have gladly joined a different party instead of forming the ACP if that party existed when I became a communist, but it didn't. We had the corrupt CPUSA, the culture warrior PSLers, and a bunch of trots and DSA. Bunch of sellouts. So the ACP is the only option. It's never been more clear, folks. Never been more clear. Does PSL cuck for the Democrats? Not directly. They'll run in the elections, but just pay attention to the actual activism that they do. They're always marching side by side with Democrats. And the issues that they choose to fight on are almost always culture war issues where they're aligned with the Democrats against the Republicans. And this is not a communist position. You have to cut through the culture war bullshit, build a proletarian culture, a communist culture among your people, and reach people with economic issues that unite them, not divide them with these cultural issues. And what PSL does is help the Democrats divide them with cultural issues. And they're basically, I mean, it's kind of like a pyramid scheme for the Becker family. I'm not going to lie. They just like get college students and protesters who already agree with them on everything to come into their party. And then they hit them with these like outrageous fundraising goals. Like, you got to hit $400 for us by the end of the month. And then you just have one family, the Beckers, Brian Becker and his ilk, at the top, collecting money and then preparing to leave the U.S. if the State Department cracks down on them. I assume. I don't know that for sure, but I assume they're just going to dip out if the government comes for them, which I guess I don't blame them in that case. But yeah, it's kind of just a pyramid scheme, sadly. They do it just behind closed doors. Yeah, yes. In fact, many are saying within the PSL that they should just fuse with DSA. You heard it here first. Yeah, remember that when it happens. When DSA merges with PSL, remember what Kyle said. Yeah, that's the thing. It's behind closed doors. In practice, they're Democrats while claiming to not be, and while running a socialist candidate for president every 4 years, as if that's going to do anything. ACP is the real party of the working class. You're damn right. DKP is German, very small and heavily monitored by the state, I'm sure. Basically old school socialists that managed to slowly reestablish a youth league. That's great. Yeah, maybe we should talk about building some kind of connections with the DKP. I don't know anything about them, but it would be worth talking because obviously we have a lot of influence online, which is a lot of younger people. And that's international though, right? Like, people watch my videos in Germany. People watch my videos in Mexico. It's only, my audience is only like 60% American on TikTok, which is pretty low for an American. So, you know, maybe we could help inject some energy into that youth league. I don't know. It's worth looking into. I don't know anything about the party, so obviously I would have to do a lot more research, but I'm British, exactly. And guess which party we work very closely with and we do recruiting for and help with media? The Workers' Party of Great Britain. So we could do a similar thing with other countries and other parties too, if need be. Okay, so old Pete Hegseth, our great, wise, and powerful Secretary of War, sarcasm, guy hasn't done anything impressive in his life, is now being accused of war crimes because he took a page out of Israel's book and he did what they call a double tap, which is where, well, I guess it's not exactly a double tap. So what the Israelis do is they'll bomb a civilian area, and then when emergency personnel come, like ambulances and doctors, whatever, to take care of the situation, first responders, they'll bomb it again to kill the first responders. That's called a double tap. And this wasn't exactly a double tap, but basically they hit a Venezuelan fishing boat with a missile and then hit it with another missile to kill the survivors, which is a war crime. And Pete Hegseth is blaming it on fog of war. He's saying, how could we know? Which is just so, same thing the Israelis say. How could we know who we were targeting with our high-tech targeted missiles that hit their intended target? So he's using that same excuse. But even the Democrats now, again, acting like controlled opposition, pretending like they're so opposed to Pete Hegseth doing this, as if Obama didn't do the same thing for 8 years. But anyways, he's in the hot seat right now for that. And I thought we would just real quick go over Pete Hegseth's entire career before he became Secretary of War. First of all, this is a funny video of Pete Hegseth talking about war crimes when Obama was president. So when somebody on the other team was the president, this is what he had to say.
Have been a part of unfortunate incidents. There are some guys at Leavenworth who made really bad choices on the battlefield. And I do think there have to be consequences for abject war crimes. If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why.
Oh, you mean like missile striking civilian survivors? Oh, I forgot to pop the screen up. My bad. It's just Pete Hegseth yapping. I'm sure you guys heard it, but
the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander in chief. There's a stand. There's an ethos. There's a belief that we are above what so many things that our enemies or others would do. But there are also plenty of guys there. Clint Lawrence is a name that comes to mind immediately. A lieutenant who made a tough call. I believe it was in Afghanistan.
So there's Pete Hegseth saying that people should be held accountable for war crimes unless it's him. If it's him, then it's fog of war. Someone said that video's been making the rounds all day. Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's a very telling video. So for those who don't know, Pete Hegseth makes a big deal about his military service, right? He claims to be this military veteran who served his country, so he knows what it takes. He knows what the military actually needs, what needs to be done. You know, once we kick out all the trannies, Russia and China are screwed. Trust me, bro. That's kind of his shtick. That and trying to act like a tough guy, right? I'm not the Secretary of Defense. I'm the Secretary of War. I am tough and intimidating. Trust me, bro. But this is a guy who graduated first from Princeton before getting his master's at State Department U, also known as Harvard. So he was a pompous little Harvard grad. And then he was sent on deployment after joining the military, but these deployments were what we would call resume builders. Deployments where you're not actually involved in any fighting, you're not engaged in any firefights, you're acting as staff far away from any danger. And then when you return to America, you can boast and brag about your time in the service and how you defended this country and you protected America. So you have the right to send more young Americans to fight and die in wars, even though you never actually fought. What did he actually do? He was a guard at Guantanamo Bay. For those who don't know, Guantanamo Bay is outside of the jurisdiction of U.S. federal courts. So it's basically an illegal prison where people can be held indefinitely without trial and where they can be tortured. It is notorious for this. And Pete Hegseth was one of the officials running that. So his time in the service was running a U.S. torture camp that should be illegal and should be closed down, that people have been calling to close down for decades. He was in Baghdad, Iraq during a pretty dangerous time, but he never saw a single firefight. He was far away from the actual danger doing staff work. And then he went in Afghanistan in 2012 just to train people, again, not to actually fight. Whether he was training U.S. troops or random terrorist militants, I guess we'll never know, but you can make your assumptions there based on what the U.S. was doing in Afghanistan at the time. He also created a veteran advocacy group called Vets for Freedom, and the Vets for Freedom pushed for a surge policy in Iraq to send 30,000 more troops, because nothing gives the veterans more freedom than sending them to Iraq to guard the oil. So his career so far has been guarding a torture camp and creating an advocacy group for the Iraq War. After that, he worked at the Manhattan Institute, which is a corporate-funded think tank. And then he became the CEO of the Koch brothers-funded Concerned Veterans for America. Now, what is Concerned Veterans for America, you may ask? It sounds like a nice organization. Are they helping veterans, bringing them food, bringing them health care, taking care of them? No, in fact, Concerned Veterans for America was a corporate-funded group with the goal of privatizing the VA. The number one healthcare provider in America, the VA, that provides healthcare to veterans once they come home from war. They were trying to privatize it so that the Koch brothers, two of the richest people in the entire country, could profit off of it And so that healthcare would be more restricted and more expensive for American veterans. So Pete Hegseth's career outside of working at Guantanamo Bay was working on behalf of disgusting pro-war corporate think tanks to send Americans to Iraq and to take away their health care when they come back here to America and allow some of the most disgusting Americans of all time, the Koch brothers, to profit off those veterans. That's Pete Hegseth. He's not a man of the people. He's not a man of the troops. He's not a man of the vets. He has sold out the vets time and time again. His entire career is based around acting like one of the troops, one of the guys, one of the people who fought for this country, while secretly working to screw over the troops on behalf of the richest people in the nation. That is his job. That's how he built his resume. And now he's in charge of our entire military, which is frightening. This man should be nowhere near the reins of power. And the way that he created an organization that claimed to support veterans while trying to take their health care away, dude, it doesn't get much more disgusting than that. Like, there's a special place in hell for you, Pete Hegseth, right next to your Koch brother donors. I mean, it doesn't get any more evil than that. Lobbying for the Iraq War and then lobbying for Iraq War veterans to have their health care taken away so that Wall Street can profit off of it. You piece of shit. I have no sympathy or empathy for this man. He is utter scum. Maybe the worst singular person in the Trump administration, in terms of character and in terms of how they've used their life. So yeah, fuck Pete Hegseth. That's all I gotta say, really. Fuck that dude. You ain't no troop. You ain't no warrior, buddy. You're a pompous Harvard grad who helped fat, disgusting oligarchs screw over actual American troops. You piece of shit. I know what you actually did, Pete Hegseth. Every time you're up there bragging about your military service, I hope you think, oh man, Eddie Liger Smith knows what I actually did. He knows I'm a liar. He knows I'm a Koch brothers stooge who's never been in a firefight. What a bitch. Anyways, one more story for today. The guy has crusader tattoos, LOL. Oh yeah, he's such a crusader. He's such a powerful crusader on behalf of the Manhattan Institute and the Heritage Foundation. A crusader against the American people on behalf of corporate think tanks. Sack of shit. When I do a story like that, I can't even contain my rage, bro. I just want to punch through my screen. When I think about Pete Hegseth pretending to be, like Mr. Troop, Mr. Military, while he fights to take their healthcare away on behalf of the Kochs. It makes you want to scream. It makes you filled with murderous rage. Truly a cretin. Literally. I thought it was the Georgia flag. Not quite. Although Georgia was the first Christian state, I believe. So, anyway, this is the last thing I wanted to cover. Haas, our wise and powerful chairman, posted a Reddit thread basically responding to all of the claims and lies that have been made about the ACP on Reddit, which are many because Reddit is Fed City. And it was really, really, really good. Basically debunked every bit of nonsense that's been said about us, explained how Marxism, Leninism historically is not about, identity politics, sex issues, things like that, how it's always been rooted in class struggle, showed without a doubt that our line and our position is rooted in the Marxist-Leninist tradition. And on any issue where someone says we're not rooted in the Marxist-Leninist tradition, it's usually them just lying about us, right? It's usually made up. And our actual positions are always in line with the views of Lenin and Marx and Mao. I mean, some things are slightly different because we live in different times, of course, and, they have to be adapted to our specific conditions. But for the most part, with the base of our policy and our outlook and our method for analyzing the world around us all comes from the Marxist-Leninist tradition, not the fascist conservative tradition, of course. So I'm not going to read it all because it's super, super long. But if you have questions about the ACP, I do recommend reading this because it really does. It's kind of a nuke of all the nonsense about us that's been spread. But the comments under this were interesting too, because Haas said at the end, this post will 100% generate cognitive dissonance among anti-ACP leftists who read it and attempt to rationally respond, even in their own head. The only way they could prove me wrong is by actually, in some way, responding rationally. But I predict they won't do that. They have no response. They'll irrationally keep their eyes closed and their ears shut because they simply can't handle the truth. And you can't handle the truth. And if you are coming from one of these leftist communities on Reddit, ask yourself, perhaps a dark question. Why? That is a dark question. Great post. And of course, all of the responses are either infrared people agreeing with Haas or people saying literal nonsense, like literal, like 3 IQ 14-year-olds commenting nonsense, people who clearly didn't read the post. There's not a single rational response in here that I have found thus far, which is just par for the course. But I think it was good to do this, to invade enemy territory, the CIA CIA social media app that is Reddit, to put our position out there and debunk all of the myths that have been spread on this app. Like I said earlier in the stream, we want to put our message on as many platforms as we possibly can, reach as many ears and eyes as we can. Let's see if we can find one. I am not even an American. I didn't know about the ACP, but they banned me from a leftist subreddit for asking, what is the ACP? That's exactly what happened to me on the deprogram Reddit. You know, Hakeem and Ugopnik and Second Thought. I was like, someone said, Eddie, didn't you do an interview with Haas? And I was like, yeah, and I linked it, and I went to log back onto the subreddit, and it's like, you have been permanently banned from this subreddit. I'm like, for linking a conversation with Haas? Like, the level of derangement these people have. The ACB derangement syndrome is insane. You could sit down and be like, Haas is a piece of shit. And they would be like, how dare you mention his name? Haas is Voldemort. We don't mention his name around here. How dare you mention he who should not be named? Haas Aldine. It's just so stupid. The guilt by association stuff is so stupid. Like, just be a normal person. Quit freaking out because people associate with people who you don't like. You're weird. ACP are real ones. Let's go. Thank you, Estar Bach, comrade, with the 10. Appreciate you a ton. And your Instagram account. I think I always say that when Estar Bach donates. Maybe I haven't said it in a while, though. Appreciate you. And Alan, thank you, Alan. Appreciate you as well, brother, for the 20. That's huge. Thank you very much. MAGA forever? Yeah, forever promising to release the Epstein files and then not because they're all pedos. Trump 2028? Yeah, 4 more years of Epstein associates. Let's go. End the wars except for Venezuela, right? Keep doing what you're doing, bro. See, most of these comments are just positive. The question I have been asking myself from the beginning, and which led me to ACP, and which I will always ask and never stop asking, why do they hate more ACP more than DSA and Democrats? I have never seen one of the bourgeois leftists give me an answer to this question. Exactly what I was just talking about before. Why are we more hated than Zoran Mamdani? Why are we called Trump supporters when we've never once endorsed Trump? When Zoran doesn't get any flack for actually meeting with Trump and palling around with him? Why is it cool for DSA to wave the American flag, but when we do it, it's fascism? It's like the double standards is insane. ACP on top. Crazy how insane some people are on Reddit. Yeah, you have to keep in mind there are thousands of Fed accounts on Reddit. What was it like once USAID got shut down? There were like thousands and thousands of Reddit accounts that also shut down instantaneously. Like Reddit is the most Fed infiltrated outlet on the internet, pretty much, besides CIA.gov, I guess. So it's completely insane people, but also feds, and then borderline insane people who have had their brains poisoned by feds. That's pretty much it. The 2020 election. Oh, I don't think I can say that or I'll get banned. You know, a lot of people in my chat would probably agree with you on that, Doug, actually. A lot of people would agree. At the very least, we all agree that the Democrats are not beyond rigging an election. That, you know, that's something that they've done before to Bernie Sanders. So I wouldn't put it past them. I've never looked into the 2020 election and the results, but I've met some communists who believe that they believe Trump's narrative about that, I guess. I don't think you're even allowed to say that, you know, what this guy said without getting banned on YouTube for misinformation. So people like CCK Philosophy and the ProWiki guy. ProWiki is unhinged, bro. Whoever runs that outlet is a bunch of idiots. They used to be run by cool people and they got taken over by like these insane leftists who then purged all of the Marxist-Leninists from ProWiki for being conservative and fascist. So now it's just like a fake Wikipedia that calls everybody a fascist. Are some of the worst anti-ACP grifters there are, among other Twitter leftists. They open with hate against the ACP, but literally don't even know why. The people who have the strongest anti-ACP sentiments usually have zero arguments to back themselves up or use retarded liberal victimizations, culture war psyops to deflect the fact that they are misled as communists. Yeah, that's what I thought was so good about this post from Haas. He was like, listen, some of the things you guys are criticizing us for are the positions that Lenin and Stalin and Mao had back then, or our positions are even more, you know, progressive, liberal, or more, in the leftist viewpoint, progressive than theirs. And these people call themselves communists, but they don't actually know the communist tradition. They don't know communist theory, so they don't realize that, yes, communist countries in the past were very socially conservative as compared to liberal America today. And our positions on these issues in a lot of cases are nowhere near as socially conservative as communists of the past. So when you're telling us that we're not communists because we take these positions, you just don't know what you're talking about. You don't know your own tradition. You're putting a label on yourself before actually discovering what communism means. Because there were hundreds of years of communists before you. It didn't just start with you. I know your liberal individualism tells you that it did, but this is a tradition. It's a collective. It's not just whatever you want it to be. Everybody who disagrees with me is a fascist anti-communist. That's what communism is. I saw someone saying the other day that Haas went surfing with Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, dude, I went surfing with Monica Lewinsky, actually. So I'm a Fed too. Yeah, see, all these are pretty much positive. I've noticed the average ACP hater is quite literally incapable of thinking. It's bizarre. Yeah, I'm trying to find some of the negative comments so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. But really, it's a lot of positive feedback. And what does this tell you? What does this tell you? Why is this post not flooded with comments of people attacking Haas? There are so many Reddit threads with hundreds and thousands of comments on it attacking the ACP and saying we're fascist. But then when the actual chairman of the ACP comments and says, tell me why we're fascist, not a damn one. It's radio silence. It's the same thing as Haas's debate the chairman streams. The people who talk the most shit about us wouldn't show up because they knew they couldn't defend their arguments. They knew they were lying about us and smearing us, so they didn't show up because they didn't want to get called out on it. If they actually believed the things that they said about us, you would see a bunch of coherent arguments. If someone from the Republican or Democratic Party or DSA or any party that I don't agree with made a Reddit post and say, please make a coherent argument as to why you don't support us, I could write a 10,000 page essay in 5 minutes about why I don't support them. So why can't these anti-ACP haters give one rational, coherent argument as to why they hate us? Ask yourself that. Because your party is objectively anti-LGBTQ and you call yourself MAGA communist, 2 words that don't go together. Okay, so we're not communists because 2 words don't go together. In the words of Lenin and Marx, if you put those 2 words together, you're clearly not communist. That's his argument, that those 2 words don't go together. And then a post with 27 likes says, clearly you didn't read the post, because Haas explains that we're not against anybody for their sexual identity or for their gender or whatever. We just, that's not what politics is about. Do what you want to do at home. We're focused on organizing the class struggle when we're at work together. And we don't care about your sexual proclivities or whatever, as long as you're not hurting anyone or being a predator. Our Constitution goes as far as to explicitly ban discrimination based upon those reasons. So if you're discriminating against somebody in the ACP for being gay or whatever, then you're going to be punished for that. Because we don't want to have culture war fights based on identity issues. We want to be focused on the class struggle at all times. So yeah, another person who didn't read the post. Our party promotes non-discrimination, enthusiastically engaged with all people, including minorities. Yes. And the party is, of course, not MAGA communist. That's a strategy that was invented by the infrared community. See people explaining that. This one was a little bit longer. This was actually more of a coherent argument. It was still really stupid, but Hazeldine, I mean, for real, it's mainly the shit he said recently, very anti-gay, and the mixed historical track record they've had. What is that? What mixed historical track record? Like, God, this guy's punctuation is rough. Like, I don't like IDPOL as a central part of the global labor movement, but you cannot ignore the civil rights aspect of Marxist beliefs and intersectionality with other civil rights struggles. Yes, intersectionality, a famous Marxist concept that definitely wasn't invented by academic liberals. There has to be nuance. Trans swimmers should not be the focus, but trans people who can't exist, mirror healthcare get. There needs to be nuance. What do you mean, like banning discrimination? Nuance as in saying we're not going to punish you for your sexual proclivities and you can do what you want as long as you're not hurting anybody. Trans swimmers should not be the focus. And also, like, are you saying that we need to support biological men being in women's sports to be communists? Like, I'm pretty sure 98% of America, at least, is against biological men competing in women's sports. Like, if we have to take up that position to be communists, and this person's saying they don't want that to be at the forefront, of course, but they're kind of saying, like, but you need to accept that in the background. You don't need to fight for, men to compete against women. But, you need to accept that implicitly in the background. Like, no, I'm sorry. I've been involved with sports my entire life. There's a very good American female wrestler at my weight who's won multiple Olympic gold medals, and I could pin her in about 30 seconds. There are differences between genders physically. I'm sorry. And that's not me. That's not discrimination. That's not us saying that trans people can't be communists or whatever, or they deserve to die and be hunted down. Of course not. But there is room for nuance on these positions, meaning you have to allow room for nuance too, right? You have to allow room for nuance, in my opinion, as a coach of athletics. in saying, well, there are biological differences between male and females. So if somebody has those male biological advantages, they shouldn't be able to compete against the female. That's a pretty nuanced position. You know, maybe they can have their own league or, you know, whatever. Yeah, this is the thing with leftists. They call for nuance and critical thinking, but that they don't allow any nuance on the other side. We do need to work to guarantee basic human dignity for all, but that doesn't extend to having opinions that on what swimming class trans folks should. So again, they're saying we need to have nuance, but you all need to accept. That's explicitly what they're saying. I was right. We all need to have nuance, but you, as a communist, need to accept the idea that biological men should compete with women. Like, no. And Marxism is the ideology of the working class, and no working class people support that. None. And it's anti-woman. I'm sorry. I coach girls. You're going to allow people who are biologically men to go into their girls-only spaces and compete against them in wrestling where they could literally hurt them? No, fuck off. Not accepting that ever. Because I have to protect the athletes who I coach, the girls who I coach, who I care about, you know, more than anything. So, fuck off with that. Hazaldin has no nuance on this, though, and instead calls people gay who he doesn't agree with as a pejorative. How dare he? That's funny. You have no nuance on this position, my friend. You have no nuance. You're saying that we have to accept your position or we're not communists. And no major communist theorist throughout history has said anything about transgender swimmers. You're just making shit up and shoehorning it into Marxism. So yeah, pretty interesting. Scroll through that if you get a chance. Go give it a like and a boost, because the more Redditors see it, the better, you know. I do MMA, and yes, I mean, yeah, it doesn't even take an expert to tell you, right? But for me, the reason I talk about this issue now and actually give my opinion on it instead of just ignoring it like I do with most of the other culture war stuff is because I coach young girls. And the idea of them having to change next to somebody who has male body parts or having to wrestle against somebody who has male body parts and bone structure, I can't support that. I have to say something about it as an advocate for them, the athletes. But yeah, that's my personal opinion. I'm sure some people in our party disagree, but again, we do allow for nuance on these issues. We don't force everybody to have the same position on transgender swimmers because we're not focused on transgender swimmers. I am in my profession as a wrestling coach to the extent that it affects my athletes. But as a leader of the ACP, we never talk about transgender swimmers in our group chats or our meetings or policy discussions. You know, everything's focused on class struggle, organizing communities, organizing workplaces, educating people on communist theory. All right, y'all. Speaking of being a wrestling coach, I have to go wrestle one of my athletes really soon here to get him ready for his first college tournament. So that should be fun. But thank you all so much for hanging out with me. This was a great midday stream. Had decent numbers. Had really good super chat numbers. Thank you all for the super chats. That was really encouraging and really nice after having one of my TikTok accounts demonetized. This is a nice little chunk of change from you, the audience. So I really appreciate all of you. Patreon.com/MidwesternMarks if you want to support us consistently and without YouTube taking 50% of your money or 30% or whatever. But yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to stream more. There's going to be more streams coming. I promise. I mean it this time. New stream at least once a week, hopefully 2-3 times a week. So stay tuned, folks. Solidarity, everyone. acp.us. Check it out.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no right. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect makes the empires fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended and less enjoyed by one and all. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. Let no one build walls to divide us, walls of hatred nor walls of stone. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In our world poisoned by exploitation, those who have taken, now they must give. And end the vanity of nations, we've but one earth on which to live. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. And so begins the final drama, in the streets and in the field.